My conversation with Robert Zubrin, Part 3. My name is Felix and I am your host for today's episode of What About It? Today you get part 3 of my conversation with Robert Zubrin. If you have not done so yet, watch part 1 and 2 first and then finish it off with this last part. So without further ado, let's take right off.
I believe that the biggest threat to humanity in this century is the same thing as the biggest threat to humanity in the last century. And that threat is not climate change, resource exhaustion, or meteorite impact. That threat is bad ideas. And if you look at the catastrophes of the 20th century, they're all caused ultimately by the same bad idea, which is that there isn't enough to go around. Okay. This was the fundamental idea, then taking a number of different forms.
Could you give an example?
Sure. Okay. 1912, General Friedrich von Bernhardi, one of the chief intellectuals of the German General Staff, writes a book that becomes an international bestseller. In English, its title was Germany in the Next War. Mm-hmm. Okay. In which he says, look, there's only so much to go around. And who's going to get Eurasia? It's either going to be Germany or Russia. So sooner or later, we're going to have it out with them. Should it be sooner or later? Well, clearly sooner, because we got to take them down before they industrialize. Okay.
What a good idea.
So, what a great idea. Okay. So, and then if you look at what happened in 1914, they basically seized upon the pretext of the assassination of the Archduke to push the chain of events that led to World War I.
Yeah.
Then 1939, Hitler, even more hysterically, the laws of existence require uninterrupted killing so that the better may live. Germany needs living space. Mm-hmm. Now, this was nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Obviously.
Okay. Germany today has a larger population than the Third Reich in a smaller territory and a vastly higher living standard.
Yes.
Okay. They never needed living space. Okay. And where does the higher living standard come from? Not by stealing other people's land and stealing their cows. Okay. It came through the advance of science and technology. Some accomplished by Germans, much accomplished by people the Germans trying to exterminate.
Yeah.
And so this was all nonsense. And then today, okay, I can tell you for a fact, okay, as I know, I've talked to them, that there are people in the American national security establishment who believe that war with China is inevitable. Mm-hmm. Because there's only so much oil in the world. And if the Chinese start having a living standard comparable to Westerners and they all have cars, there won't be enough oil in the world. Mm-hmm. And so we have to stop them.
We have to build more Teslas.
And you can bet your bottom dollar that there are opposite numbers to them in Beijing who look at the world from the other side of the chessboard and basically think the same thing from the opposite point of view.
Yeah.
And and if
That's
this
a frightening
kind of
thought, by the way,
is allowed to prevail, there will be war. Okay, there will be war. But on the other hand, if it can be shown that it's not true that there's only so much to go around, because the earth comes with an infinite sky and it's wide open, that completely changes the picture. And once again, it's not a question of someone bringing oil back from Mars. Okay, that's not the issue.
Obviously not.
Okay. The threat is not that there isn't enough oil. The threat is not that there are too many people. Mm-hmm. The threat is people who think there are too many people.
Yeah.
And the and this is what we have to refute. And it is this difference in outlook. Okay. This determines if there's only so much to go around, then every additional person is a minus. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if resources are fundamentally a function of human creativity, then every additional person is a plus. And the freer they are, the more prosperous they are, the better educated they are, the better it is for you.
So you
Okay,
think...
so you want the sons and daughters of Chinese peasants to become scientists and engineers.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly my opinion, by the way. So you think that expanding humanity beyond low Earth orbit wouldn't just make a nice Mars colony? You say that it would maybe even eradicate your number one reason for humanity's problems.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
The most dangerous thing we face right now, as I say, it's not resource exhaustion or global warming or anything. It's this idea that there isn't enough to go around. None of the catastrophes of the 20th century were caused by actual resource shortages. They were caused by a belief in resource
Exactly.
shortage.
Yeah, but we might be hitting the wall with a few resources here in the future, won't we?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, and by the way, there's a very good book on this subject called The Ultimate Resource by Julian Simon.
Mm-hmm.
And Julian Simon was the guy, 1972, there was a very prestigious organization called the Club of Rome. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
Mm-hmm.
But the aristocrats, corporate presidents, very prestigious people got together. They formed this club, which is called the Club of Rome. And then they produced a report with the aid of a team at MIT, which had a computer and therefore was authoritative because computers can never be wrong. Mm-hmm. And they said basically that we're going to run out of everything by the year 2000. Okay.
Well, how about that?
Okay. So, here's the amount of oil that we know the reserves. This is how fast we're using it. It's gone by 1998. Here's the total amount of copper. It's gone by 1999. Zinc can last through 2001. But basically, they go through all this stuff like this. It's all going to run out by the year 2000. And
when did they make that prediction?
1972.
Okay.
And all the major press, lauded this and basically, so this is a sober warning. We must take this into account.
Of course.
The only people that are denying this are these Neanderthals from the Chamber of Commerce who think they can just keep on having economic growth forever without taking into account the scientific facts that the resources are going to run out. Mm-hmm. Okay, now, there was an economist named Julian Simon, and he said, this is total nonsense. This is not going to happen at all. Okay, and so he then made a famous bet with a man named Paul Ehrlich, who was the author of a book, a bestseller at the time called The Population Bomb, where Ehrlich was predicting we were going to run out of food by about 1975. Okay, but and Ehrlich said, you just don't understand. Okay, blah, blah, blah. So they made a bet, and Simon said to Ehrlich, look, name any 10 commodities you like, and I will bet you that 10 years from now, in inflation-adjusted dollars, they will all be cheaper than they are now. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you can name 10 metals, oil, whatever. Okay?
Whatever, yeah.
And because how do we measure scarcity? It's by price.
Yes.
Okay, so they made the bet. Simon won on all 10. Okay.
Yeah.
And he said, it was a sucker bet. If you look at history, everything is cheaper than it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. You can have fluctuations from one year to the next. Okay. But the odds are extremely high that 10 years from now, people are going to be richer in real terms. That is to say that the basics of life are going to be cheaper than they were 10 years ago.
That's what keeps repeating itself over and over. Yeah.
And that's right. And so, and you can have, temporary fluctuations. OPEC can constrict the oil supply and send the price up. But overall, it's actually becoming cheaper. Mm-hmm. And because what is and what is not a resource is a function of technology. And there's no such thing as natural resources. There's only natural raw materials. It is human creativity that turns raw materials into resources. Mm-hmm. So, for example, take the most elementary example, land, which people think of as a natural resource. Land was not a natural resource until people invented agriculture.
Yeah, that's true.
And and it's by improving agriculture, it has multiplied the value of land as a resource. Oil was not a resource till we invented petroleum drilling, refining, and machines that could run on the product. Uranium was not a resource till we invented nuclear power.
I get the idea.
Yeah, deuterium is not a resource today, but will be once we have fusion power.
Exactly. So you're saying basically we are creating new resources as we advance in technology. But
and that's why, as the population of the world has gone up, the standard of living has gone up, not down. Because the more people, the more inventors, and inventions are cumulative.
Absolutely, I agree on that. But you said that you brought up the example with the infinite growth. In a finite space, can you have infinite growth?
Who says we're in a finite space?
Well, we won't be anymore if Starship works, but right now we are.
Yeah, but we're not going to be.
Okay, so
See, that's the point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
We're not going to be, and one simply has to assume. Here we have Musk is right in front of us. And there is Bezos, although he's proceeding at a much slower pace. And, you take these people that are doing this, okay? 100 years ago, the number of people in the United States that were as rich as Elon Musk in inflation-adjusted dollars, okay, maybe 10.
Yep.
You can name them: Rockefeller, Morgan, Harriman, Astor. It's very limited group.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people like that right now.
Yeah.
And so the chances that there would be an anomaly, a sport of nature, as it were, who would choose to use his fortune for such purposes has greatly increased because there are so much more of them. Okay. And then beyond that class of people, there's possibilities of initiatives from the coming together of people of more ordinary resources with investors, as we're, for instance, seeing with Rocket Lab. Humanity is developing its powers, and those powers are going to enable us to break out into space, and it's going to happen this decade.
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully. Okay, to get a final note into all this, we talked about basically the whole history of spaceflight in this interview, and it was a blast to go through all of this with you. Let's keep that thought of Starship actually getting us into space in the next 10 years, into Mars. Onto Mars and to make us able to do all these different things. How would you be on board with this? You're president of the Mars Society, and how would you use this to influence the cause? Is there any goal for you that you want to achieve in this?
Well, I believe, and Musk has told me that he needs us to do this. Is to defend this project in the public space, because there will be people that oppose it. There are already people opposing it on the basis of forward or back contamination. That there are people who say in NASA itself, not just among demagogues at large, that sending people to Mars will destroy their chance of discovering if there's life on Mars. Okay. And therefore he has to be prevented. There are others who say, what if they go to Mars and they can bring back the Red Death? Okay. From Mars. Okay. Now, look, both of these arguments are very fallacious. If you go to Mars, okay, and you discover life, okay, if you go to Mars with people and you don't discover life, then you've done a pretty good job, much better job than you can with robots, of disproving the existence of life on Mars, because you can explore it more thoroughly. Yes. But let's say you discover life on Mars, okay? So once again, the only way you could get a negative reading on that question is by going with people, okay? Now, to get a positive, okay,
because
now,
just for the audience, with robotic exploration, you would just not be able to cover enough space to get enough tasks done, right?
Sure, they're extremely feeble as explorers compared to humans.
Alexander, 1 second. There's my son just entered the room. He does always when I do anything here. Du musst nach unten gehen, so Mama.
Let's deal with the forward contamination issue first, because it actually is worth talking about. Okay, if you go to Mars, once again, the only way you could get a negative conclusion is with a thorough kind of exploration that could only be done with human explorers on the scene.
Yes.
Because we have to not only explore a large number of places and on the surface, we have to set up drilling rigs, got to reach the groundwater. That's the most logical place to look for life on Mars.
Yes.
And
and
so
robots just can't do that. Or they would take hundreds of years. Exactly.
Yeah. All
Yes.
right. So now, what about a positive reading? Well, if you go to Mars, and well, obviously, if we find life on Mars that is different in any way, either fundamentally in terms of DNA and RNA, amino acids, or just in terms of form from things that we see on Earth, then we know that we didn't bring it. Okay, but what if we go to Mars and we find bacteria of looking essentially the same as Earth? Okay,
we couldn't be sure.
And only ones that are things that we've encountered before on Earth. Okay. Now, so how would you know whether it was native or whether you brought it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a dilemma.
Well, if it's no, it's very simple.
Okay.
If it's native, it was there before you were there, which means it has left residues, fossils, okay, biomarkers. And the idea that fossils of microorganisms on Mars would not prove their prior existence to your arrival is equivalent to those people who say the fossils we find on Earth does not prove that there was life on Earth before there was people.
Yeah.
Okay. The creationists who do not believe in the theory of evolution.
Let's talk about flat Earth here. Exactly.
Yeah. God could have created the Earth with fossils in it.
Yes. He could have.
Okay. Yes, he could have. Yeah, but he didn't. And the okay, so if it's native, it was there in the past, and it will have left biomarkers. If you find only microorganisms of the exact same type we see on Earth, on Mars, and there is no evidence of their prior existence before you, then you brought them. Okay, so it's that simple. Okay, to get a negative answer, you got to send people. Okay, and to actually be able to investigate them adequately, you need to send people. Because the real question about life on Mars, frankly, is not whether there's life on Mars. It's what is it? All life on Earth uses the same DNA, RNA, alphabet for encrypting genetic information from one generation to the next. Is that what life is, or is that just one alphabet, like the Latin alphabet that most Western countries use is not the same as the Cyrillic alphabet they use in Russia, although they have a common origin and therefore common characteristics, but they're both completely alien to the Chinese alphabet, which has a separate origin.
And it works exactly the same. It does the same. It fulfills the same purpose. Yeah, it would be incredible if we find life somewhere else that is not of the same build type that our life is. It would be, we could learn so much from it as well.
But once again, to do that, you really need to send people to take those samples and do the genetic analysis and so forth. And once again, it's the only way to do it. So that's the science question. That's the forward contamination. We know the most about Earth because we are here. Okay, we would not know more about the Earth if we weren't here. Compare what we know about Earth compared to what we would know if we were on another planet sending robotic rovers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, so then there's the back contamination issue, which perhaps has been given an extra edge due to the current situation. But the fact of the matter is that we didn't get the coronavirus from trees or grasshoppers. We got that presumably it is a transfer from bats or perhaps swine but in other words, mammals, things that are very closely related to
Very
humans.
close.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now there's no macrofauna or macroflora on Mars. There's nothing on Mars as closely related to us as a pine tree is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the idea that we're going to get diseases from Mars when there's no macro flora or fauna for those diseases to live. Okay. Now it's impossible to write out the life cycle of a pathogen for Mars. And so it's ridiculous. If you're concerned about bat contamination, how about stopping gardening? Because, you dig a foot into the ground, you're bringing up dirt from the 1919 flu epidemic. If you bring up stuff that is 10 feet deep, you're bringing up the bubonic plague.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole thought is kind of strange to me as well.
Right.
I have to agree.
So dirt from Earth is far more dangerous than dirt from Mars.
Yeah.
And
we're living on it.
And also the number of people that will be coming back from Mars, very few compared to those that are traveling all over the Earth. And they could easily be quarantined.
Yeah.
In fact, they would be quarantined for 6 months on the voyage home.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I was just about to say, wouldn't the journey back from Mars be a quarantine in itself?
Yeah, much more serious than anything we're imposing right now.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, so it's not a rational thing. But nevertheless, these sorts of debates are going to be held. Mm-hmm. There's going to be other debates held. I mean, look, another application of Starship, a very important one in my view, is surface-to-surface travel on Earth. Mm-hmm. Anywhere to any less than an hour. This is what will provide business for 1,000 starships. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you think Musk is actually going to pursue this? Because it's. I mean, he brought it up. You've talked to him. So do you have any news?
I don't have news, but I have observations, which is that the Starship system is well designed for exactly that application. The idea of the first stage takes off from Los Angeles or a pad that is 20 kilometers offshore of Los Angeles, and it lands on that pad. The second stage flies to Sydney and lands on a pad offshore there. And so you're Los Angeles to Sydney in less than an hour, and maybe you have a little extra time flying to the little air taxi to the offshore pad and so forth. Yeah. And then there's another first stage that is operating out of Sydney that launches things up, and then they fly back. There are about 100 satellite launches worldwide last year. There are hundreds of intercontinental airplane flights every hour.
Yeah.
So.
Well, not right now, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Point taken. But nevertheless, even now, I'm sure there are more than,
I looked it up yesterday. It's frightening how much is still flying up there. Yeah.
Okay. But in any case, you see, look, SpaceX has, remarkably, in the past 10 years, cut the cost of space launch by about a factor of 5.
Yeah, which is insane.
From 10,000 a kilogram to order of 2,000 a kilogram.
About, yeah.
Starship promises to cut it by another factor of 3 to order of $700 a kilogram. Mm-hmm. Now, that's an incredible accomplishment,
maybe
especially
even
if you
less.
consider.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you consider the fact that from 1970 to 2010, the cost of space launch did not decline at all.
It went up.
4 years of stagnation and then 10 years of a very significant decline. Mm-hmm. But, okay, $700 a kilogram to orbit is, on one level, extremely attractive. But, if you with your luggage are 100 kilograms and you fly somewhere far away for maybe $700, so that's $7 a kilogram. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's still air travel is still 2 orders of magnitude less than Starship space flight.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do we get this down to that range? You can't do it with just satellite launches, assuming even the cheapness increases the number of launches by a factor of 10 or something. You have to increase it by factors of 100 or more. And the market for that is surface to surface. And it's a logical market. I mean, look, For thousands of years, people have made money traveling the Earth's ocean. And some people have actually made money extracting wealth from the ocean, for example, by fishing. But a much bigger business by far has been the use of the ocean as a global or near global low drag medium for transport.
Yeah, especially nowadays.
Yeah, but no, even in the ancient times, that was true.
Yep.
Okay, the Roman Empire existed. Mediterranean trade was a very important business.
Yeah.
Rome could not have existed without grain from Egypt and so forth. So even in classical times, oceanic trade was a more important business than fishing, and certainly the past 500 years. What is space? Well, you can make some money in space. You can have communication satellites. You can remote sensing satellites. You will probably have orbital research labs and things. Okay, so you can make money from things done in space, sure. But space is also a global zero drag medium, connecting every point to every point. And the idea of using it for that purpose, in my view, that is a much larger business than fishing in space, is transport through space.
Okay.
It's a global zero drag ocean. Okay. Now, all right, fine. So you say, well, that's technically possible, but I can think of a lot of people who would make objections.
Who do already.
Yeah, right. So to get this established, it's going to take a significant popular base of support. And,
same problem. Yeah.
Same problem. So I think that, those of us who want to see a spacefaring future are going to have to become spokespeople for the spacefaring future.
There you go.
That you can't count on, Musk you can count on him to do a lot of stuff, but ultimately society rules and decides what is allowable and what isn't. And history isn't a spectator sport. We have to play our part.
Exactly. Yep. Okay, so basically what we're doing right now is your part in the whole play. Basically, you're transferring your knowledge and your opinion to everybody else to basically advocate for the case of space, basically. And that's exactly what I do on my channel as well. Most of my topics are exactly there. You go. If you want to show your book and talk a little bit about it. Yeah.
This is my viewpoint on this subject.
Yeah.
But we all have to make the case for space.
Yes.
Because Elon, okay, he's the man in the arena, but it's not a question of cheering him. Sure, we can cheer him. We have to fight for him.
He's under attack too. Yeah.
Yes. Now, on one level, I think he's already won. Despite the fact that he could fail. Musk skates very close to the edge of the ice. He could fall into the water. Okay, it's possible. SpaceX could fail. Run of bad luck, an explosion, people get killed. He could say something unfortunate on Twitter that gets him prosecuted by the Securities and Exchange. Whatever. You never know, okay, what could happen. Okay, he could get coronavirus. The Prime Minister of England has it, so no one's invulnerable.
Yeah.
But he's already won in the sense that he's made the point that it is possible for a well-led entrepreneurial organization to do things in this sphere and comparable spheres in 1/10 the cost, 1/3 the time than possible to be done by government bureaucracies, and even do things that they had deemed impossible altogether, such as reusable launch vehicles. So as a result of that, even if Musk should falter, there will be others who will pick up that banner. There are others who are attempting to do so right now.
Who?
Okay. There is, obviously Bezos, but there will certainly be a Chinese SpaceX.
Link Space is pursuing it right now.
Yes, exactly. And others. He's shown this can be done.
Yeah.
And there's no shortage of people out there who think if he can do it, I can do it. And
that's very
and
important.
so there will be more SpaceXs to come. And by the way, this is having effects outside of space. There's now an entrepreneurial fusion power development revolution. I discuss it in my book somewhere.
Yes, yeah.
And once again, it's because, fusion, which it seemed like this thing that, we thought it was going to happen, but it never seems to really happen. Now the people with money say maybe the problem here was really the same problem as with reusable space launch. Maybe the fundamental problem isn't technical, maybe it's institutional.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you've got a raft of fusion startups who have gotten very serious investment. Okay. And this is, Musk is not interested in fusion. He's not a believer in fusion. He's a solar power guy. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, he's done more for fusion power than anyone else in decades.
Yeah.
Simply by proving this point.
By showing it, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to have effects outside those areas and other areas of technology development. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, it's once again, there used to be a song, they laughed at Christopher Columbus, and he kind of proved that you could do something that people had thought was impossible. Edison, the Wright brothers,
so on and so
they
forth.
all become models for this kind of thinking that they said it couldn't be done, but someone could do it. And so that in itself represents a historic contribution. And so, as I say, he could fall off the ice tomorrow, but he has still let this thing, he's let the cats out of the box. And now I hope he doesn't fall on the ice because,
of course,
if SpaceX keeps moving ahead at the rate they have been, yes, we will have people on Mars before this decade is out. If SpaceX falters, it may have to wait another decade, but it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Now that he showed everybody that reusable is basically the way to go and that it is achievable. Do you think that SpaceX would work without Elon?
Not in the same way. I mean, look, Apple has kind of lost its thrust without Steve Jobs.
Yeah, that's true.
They're still in business.
It's a good example.
Okay. Mm-hmm. But they're not overthrowing the world anymore.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So I think SpaceX would stay in business without Elon. But in terms of being this organization that's making one breakthrough after another, that would be unlikely.
All right. We've been talking for almost 2 hours now. Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. This was one of the most interesting talks I've ever had in my life, and I hope that you're gonna accomplish your goals and that you're gonna keep advocating for the case of space, because that is. We share this opinion. I think it is very, very important that SpaceX or anybody else succeeds with this, because it would, at the very meaning of the word, widen our horizon. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, and please let me know as soon as this is posted. I will circulate it everywhere.
Thank you very much. I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. So this wraps up my interview with Robert Zubrin. What do you think about Musk's motivation, and where do you think will his journey lead him and us? As always, tell me in the comments. Thank you for watching this episode of What About It, and now would be the appropriate time to hit the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell button to actually receive a notification when I do my uploads. It's a version of support that doesn't cost a penny, and it does help me to produce more and better content. And if you do want to spend your money, consider becoming a patron and get insights into the production of What About It and chat with me on the Discord. Or you could buy yourself a new shirt on our merchandise store and look like me. There are plenty original designs available in good quality for a low price, made by a space nerd for other space nerds. It all helps me to give you the latest and greatest about space and science. I hope to see you on the next episode. Until then, have a great time.